So in the framework, we begin with two observations. The first observation simply defines a just law as that which achieves justice for somebody, namely, which it punishes those who violate the rights of their fellows. Second observation is that a free society is predicated on the fundamental equality of each individual before the law, regardless of the individual's social status. So the distinction here is between equal before the law and equal in outcome, right? The value is justice. The value criterion is respect for property rights. First framework argument just establishes that property rights are how we know what the word fair means. And what's the first thing you own, Courtney?
Body.
Your own body, correct. And that means nobody can violate your bodily integrity rights, as we recall from the, what topic was that? Adolescent medical.
Yeah,
Adolescent medical. Right, okay. So nobody can violate your bodily integrity rights. And it also means that property rights are more fundamental than, and a concept upon which aggression depends. So how can we determine that if somebody is an aggressor or not? Look, the reality is if somebody walks up to you in the street and starts punching you and punching you and punching you, and finally, he turns away for a second and you notice like, oh, here's a piece of wood right here, and you're just like, pow, and you hit him, and then you run away because you think hopefully that'll stop him from being attacked. And then he has you arrested for hitting him with a piece of wood, right? Now, is that just like, okay, he randomly came up and started attacking you. He's been beating you for 10 minutes. And finally, to get away, you hit him with a piece of wood and he fell down and you were able to get away. Should you be punished?
No.
Okay. Well, how do you know who the aggressor is?
If he violated your property rights your bodily integrity first, right?
Right. So there you go. And the reason is because the act of taking back that which is rightfully yours is not aggression. Mm-hmm. Namely, if you choose to escape with your body and not get beaten anymore, then that's not certainly aggression on your part. Okay, then in the contingent level arguments, we have affirming means voting in favor of enslaving one class of citizens. So it basically states that when you're enforcing these laws, if they are enforced for reasons other than the violation of rights, it is the state taking possession of your body and therefore violating your bodily integrity rights and functionally enslaving you. If you possess another person's body, you are a slave owner.
Wait, but how are they possessing?
Well, they make you stay in a cage and tell you when you can come out, and tell you when you have to eat, and tell you when you have to shower, and all that stuff. It's called prison.
No, but yeah, but how does that why would they do that?
Well, why would they do that? Because you own a gun. You have a handgun.
Okay, sorry.
Your point is, look, when you are running this neg case, you have to deny the assumption of solvency. You have to talk exclusively about the mechanism by which they're trying to achieve solvency, right? They're trying to achieve solvency by going up to people, pointing guns at them and saying, give me your handguns. Guns are bad. So you can see I'm right because I have a handgun. Okay? The only difference is it's the state. And the proper AF response should be what?
It's fair.
The state has a monopoly on the use of force.
Okay.
So if I were to say, well, but why should these men get to point guns at that guy and take his handgun away just because those men have blue uniforms on and that guy's just wearing jeans and a t-shirt? Why?
Because that's their job.
Okay, but that's not a good enough answer. What if it was my job to maim puppies? Should I just go do my job? Hey guys, that's my job. I work in the puppy maiming industry. I'm going to maim some puppies. I just told you the answer. Because government has monopoly on use of force. Any other way means anarchy. Who is the only people who are allowed to use force that's planned? The government. Would we want it some other way? Well, okay, it's fine if Kevin's getting attacked and then he picks up a piece of wood and hits the guy and runs away. It's different if Kevin's getting attacked and he goes home and he recovers from his injuries, and 3 weeks later he shows up at the guy's house and shoots him. Okay? That's a different matter. We don't want vigilante justice. We want a society that adjudicates those issues fairly. So that if he is the victim of an injustice, if he's the victim of aggression, then he doesn't get to go be aggressive in response. He has to employ agents of the state, because the state has a monopoly on force precisely for that reason. We don't want society to descend into anarchy where everyone is just like a bunch of blood feuds, like, well, you killed my brother, so I killed your father. Well, you killed my father, so I killed your sister. Well, you killed his sister, so I killed their aunts and uncles. Well, let's all kill each other now. You know, we don't want that, so that's why we have a criminal justice system. Fine, but the question is, what justifies that use of force or threat of force by the government? What justifies that control of the body of another human being by the government? And what is the answer on the neg side?
The government.
There's only one answer. It's very simple. It starts with an A, ends with an N. It's not agriculture.
But no.
It's not agrarian. It's not concession.
Shit.
Yeah, it's
But
aggression.
concession doesn't even start with an A.
No, but it rhymes with aggression. Aggression.
Oh, okay.
What is the only thing that justifies the state taking ownership of another human being's body?
Aggression.
Aggression by the person they're taking ownership of that body. Okay? So, if you are arguing here that the reason that we should negate is that voting in favor of this resolution means voting in favor of enslaving one class of citizens, explain how do you justify that claim? Courtney? Because to ban something means to make it illegal. If you want to meaningfully ban it, that means enforcing that law. That means arresting people. It means if they do not comply with the law willingly, you have to send police with guns to their house and say, you must comply with this law, or we will arrest you, jail you, punish you in some other fashion, or if you continue to resist, eventually we will kill you. That's how it works.
Okay.
The police don't let you just be like, no thanks. I don't want to go with you today. Well, too bad, you're under arrest. Well, no thanks. You know, they don't. And so then they come in physically and grab you and take you away, or you escalate and say, well, I actually have a gun here, so no thanks. And then they go, oh, okay, well, now we have a barricaded situation. We've got a suspect who's barricaded himself inside, and we've got a situation here. Right? So you need to understand that when you are making something illegal, what are you doing?
Enforcing the law with force.
Yeah, you're saying, anytime you make something illegal, you're saying, let's use violence for this reason. And that's how the neg has to position it. And how everybody really needs to understand it. When you make something illegal, you're saying, let's use violence for this reason. All right, now, I want this to be really over the top, so I like this language here, right? My opponent advocates for the armed assault and caging of fellow citizens. The burden is entirely on him to justify this appalling disregard for the equal rights of his fellows. You're also accusing him of advocating for slavery, okay? I want it to be really strong. I want it to be strong because we need to break the notion that somehow there's some legitimacy from the state that affords other people the right to use violence on us, which is we sort of have been trained to accept, right? Well, it's a cop. I'm sure he had to beat that guy up. Well, probably, almost certainly he didn't. Contention 2. To argue in favor of aggression in response to that which is not aggression is to promote injustice and to commit ontological violence against the other. Well, to argue in favor of aggression to argue in favor of violence in response to that which is not aggression is to argue in favor of aggression.
Whoa.
That's what it should say.
Wait, to argue in favor of violence in response to
that which is not aggression is to argue in favor of aggression.
Oh, wait. So it's saying if you use violence against something that wasn't aggressive previously, then that's. Oh, okay. Why does it sound so confusing?
To argue in favor of violence in response to that which is not aggression is to argue in favor of aggression. It's simple. Now look, this is important for a number of reasons, right? You want to make clear that there is a simple algorithm we implement here on the neg, which is a certain test. Whose property is it in dispute here? Whose property is in dispute? So right now, in this case, whose property is in dispute? The gun owners. So can we determine the rightful owner of that property? Yes. What other property of the gun owner is in dispute upon the banning of handguns? His body, contingent upon his willingness to agree with the first one, right? But if he doesn't go along with the first one and give them his handgun, then he is making forfeit his own ownership of his body legally. And given the fact that that is not, that he committed no aggression against anybody else, that's not justified. Okay, that makes you the aggressor. If you start it, that guy, the same thing as with the guy who attacked you on the street, right? So it shouldn't be Kevin who gets in trouble because he hit him with a piece of wood to get away. It should be the guy who attacked him. Same thing with the government here. It shouldn't be the person who gets in trouble for walking down the street. It should be the people who get in trouble should be the ones who come to your house with guns. So that's your basic point, and you don't want to allow the underlying assumption that the government is somehow entitled to special privileges regarding these things to operate as the status quo. It's sort of like the default framework here. If you're running neg, you have to argue as though your framework were true, which is as though police officers are just, oh, that's just my neighbor Bob and my friend Joe, who's kind of a dick, and Mary over there. That's just those people. Why do they get to come? If they didn't have their little blue uniform on, we certainly wouldn't allow them to do this. If I, for example, didn't use my turn signal or something, and then some random person came and was like, "Get over to the side of the road, you! I need to yell at you for a while because you didn't use your turn signal." I would be like, no. Right? Now, if you had a gun, then I'd be like, okay, fine. I'll pull over. You got a gun? Fine. He's pointing right at me. You better pull over. All right, random person. Well, that's what happens when you see a police car. It's that same random person, but with a gun, and they're pointing it at you with flashing lights in a black and white car, not actually pointing directly at you, right? It's still there. It's right there on their hip for everyone to see, right? That's the fundamental tool of government authority is violence. It has to be. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that. It just needs to be employed properly if it's going to be just. And the neg case is a just usage of government violence is to enforce rights, not to violate them. Okay, now the third contention is saying, because this resolution specifies that it's private citizens, you say, my opponent would leave guns in the hands of the police. And this is a very bad and dangerous thing. And the reason it's bad and dangerous is because police are the most guilty of domestic abuse, domestic violence. So this one says that, and at the end in blue there it says, AF must account for the simple reality that all of the solvency he claims is contingent upon our legitimizing the murder and imprisonment of millions of innocent people. I'm going to change that to the murder and imprisonment. Okay. Condition 4. To vote for my opponent is to vote for someone who proposes to commit aggression, regardless of framework preference, Judge. We're all opposed to unjustified aggression, I should hope. And then this is Kinsella D says this stuff. Again, but right, it's like bodily integrity. Contention 5 is basically the counterplan. If my opponent wishes to deny any of this, then he'll have to explain how affirming is preferable to the neg counterplan, namely, thus the counterplan text. The United States federal government should ban the firing of handguns and the commission of a crime. We prevent all of the harms of the act without imposing any mandate to act. My opponents might point out that banning gun use in criminal activity won't actually stop people, but then making gun ownership into a criminal activity won't actually stop people either. And so the AF is saying, well, then let's force them at gunpoint and lock them in cages and beat them. Therefore, we should negate. Okay, and you have an extension on the role of government. That's the only extension you have. All right, so it's a really, really powerful neg case, I got to say. This is one of the... I don't understand why you would lose with this neg case. If you guys lose with this neg case, you're not arguing it properly. I don't know how you do lose with it. Frankly, it's right, you know?
Oh, so we're doing like a counterplan to this.
Yeah, it's the United States should ban the firing of handguns and the commission of a crime.
Right!
Right? Because look,
I knew it!
why do we need to make handguns illegal?
I told you, I had a feeling this was gonna happen. I had a feeling we were running this.
It's a good idea, right? Because then you point out the fact, well, that doesn't stop anybody. Okay, well, so what does stop somebody when you pass a law? What does stop somebody? If I made those white scarves illegal, people would continue wearing them until and unless I do what?
Threaten us with violence.
Threaten you with violence. Correct. Okay? And that's exactly your point in the neg case. So we're going to run this thing or what? Are you ready, Court? Any questions before we start?
Must I go on F? Okay.
Yeah, you should go on AF. Look, you can win with that AF case. There's nothing inherently wrong with that AF case. It's just not...
It's so confusing.
Well, that's the point of it. I mean, that's where its strength comes from. It's confusing critical theory BS plus a climate change card that's been strangely co-opted.
But it's supposed to be confusing for them, not for the both of us.
Well, look, if you understand that it does unravel in certain spots, there's undeniably it does. It's not the strongest argument chain. That's all there is to it. But that's okay because you need to think of it tactically as well. Look, you've got enough distance in that case for sure to win the round with it. In fact, I'd put potentially AF an advantage because neg is supposed to be answering case stuff. So what you need to do a really good job of, Kevin, is in the 1NR/C, 1NC/R, you need to hammer the connections between your case and how the case answers her points directly where it does. So you want to cross-apply stuff where you can. We don't have a ton of extensions already pre-cut on neg or rebuttals or ATs or whatever, but I think there's a couple of stuff on the impacts themselves. I don't think you're going to win on impacts, so I mean I wouldn't bother trying to be like, no, if we ban handguns there'll be more handgun murders. You know, don't bother with that, right? I mean, you do say that, but you say it's going to be way more handgun murders by the police of innocent people who happen to have handguns. They'll be the ones who are getting murdered.
What do I say to that?
You say, that's nonsense. People mostly will just obey the law. I mean, you're not going to have a civil war because, sorry, you can have as many rifles as you want, but you can't have your handguns anymore. You make that kind of argument. What I'm saying there, notice how convincing I sounded? Didn't I sound convincing? I actually think there would be a civil war if they tried to ban handguns. I don't think people would give them up. I think there's no way in hell people are going to be like, I don't own one, so I don't know. I'm not a gun owner, but I don't know what it feels like to have one. But if I did have one and they were like, you can't have that anymore, I'm like, it's my thing. It's my object.
That's true.
So, I don't know. That's what I feel about it. I guess I probably shouldn't be dropping F-bombs.